Wireless LAN Professionals, podcast episode 113.
Wireless LAN Professionals is a place to educate, inform, encourage, and entertain those involved in wireless LANs. This Wireless LAN Professionals podcast is an audio manifestation of these goals. Our host is a wireless LAN veteran, consultant, designer, and teacher, Keith Parsons. And now, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals.
Welcome to this episode. This is episode 113 of Wireless LAN Professionals podcast. My name is Keith Parsons, and today I had a chance to interview Shaun Neal on how to engage in the community and how you might want to become a thought leader and how that would affect you. We also have a interview by Cate and a review of Revolution Wi-Fi's website. Great website. You should be looking there. As well as a interview that I did with Joel Crane. Joel works with MetaGeek and gave us some insight in some other views of how Wi-Fi is used in other industries, not just in the enterprise Wi-Fi.
Main session.
Shaun, how are you?
Good, Keith.
Shaun, where are you?
I am here in San Diego. I am also not on the road today, which is unusual.
I'm guessing you are living in that wonderful year-round great weather there in San Diego.
I am. It's low 80s, maybe high 70s here.
Yeah, the rest of us are only jealous. But then again, you have to deal with the traffic, so it's a trade-off.
Yes, this is true.
Well, I thought we'd get you online and just get a chance to talk a little bit about your, not so much your career in networking, but your career in social media and how being involved in blogging and working with social media, how it's helped you. So let's get started. How has social media helped you in your career?
Wow.
Just drop one right there in your lap. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. So I think, initially, I used social media as more of a way to stay on top of things in the industry, right? So more kind of lurking and listening, right? Keeping tabs on what other businesses are doing, really trying to get a feel for out there, feel for what's going on, and just understand, our industry a little better. And then I, thanks to a challenge by you at one of our at the first event, I started digging more into actually writing, and I think I found that spending the time to organize my own thoughts to put into writing helps me learn the material better, and be more thoughtful about how I'm thinking things through. So yeah, I think for me that's been a huge benefit.
So there's two really big differences in writing that I've seen. You have to write very succinctly and tightly and not use very many letters at all in Twitter to stay within 140 characters. And then there's opportunity to write a blog where you can have more organization and thought process. How do you go about thinking about those two if you're going to be starting to write one of those two methods? Or do you not think at all about the Twitter one?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, Twitter for me, I use it mostly to, again, keep tabs on people, and I use it as kind of a light touch point with people, right? So, keep tabs on what's going on. I'll see where somebody is, that kind of thing. For me, it's more informational. I don't do a lot on Twitter, honestly, other than that kind of thing. And then I will use it to help socialize something that I did, like a blog post. I'll send a link out on Twitter so people can read it. I definitely find for me that my own personal blog site and LinkedIn are the areas where I spend most of my time from a social media standpoint.
I'm not a big LinkedIn guy. So tell me, what's LinkedIn do for you?
So for me, I've probably the biggest thing is in my sort of put my company hat on, right? It lets me tap into into that network of coworkers and people that my coworkers have worked with in the past and that kind of thing. And so there, it's a network where it helps me a lot because I guess that, I can get more reach on the blogs that I'm working on and, promote myself or my own brand or my company's brand.
So for LinkedIn, you'll write a blog post, you'll put a little Twitter note out, and then you'll also try to share that on LinkedIn. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. So, and sometimes I will recreate the blog post in LinkedIn, or sometimes I will just share in LinkedIn that I've created a blog post elsewhere. There's a couple advantages to doing it in LinkedIn directly. So a lot of times it'll be create a new LinkedIn post, and at the end of the post, I'll link to my personal blog.
But you'll actually copy and paste the whole blog content in LinkedIn?
Basically, yeah.
And what's that extra value? Again, I'm showing my lack of knowledge about LinkedIn. I just treat it like people when you're looking to find a job.
Yeah, no. So I think it's the reach to, the partner community. So, I work for a VAR. I have all my relationships out there with, the Arubas and the Ciscos and the, all those companies, right, as well as our customer base. And so not everyone will, as much as I would like them to, but not everyone follows my own personal blog. So this is a way to get it out there. And then also, I think, there's a good chance you can pick up readers you may never would have had access to because, somebody you knew happened to share what you wrote, like in Twitter, and then that person gets interested in what you're doing, right? So it opens the door to, in my opinion, more opportunity, which could be anywhere from, maybe a speaking or another writing engagement to, business or billable type, activity.
Well, I will learn from your experience and have to put more time into LinkedIn now. So back to the writing question, what's your writing process? Like blank piece of paper, start writing into Word, outline? How do you go about preparing one of these writing documents?
So I have learned to use Evernote for almost everything I do. I like it because it syncs between all my devices, and I think as a mobility person, that's the world we live in, right? So I think of something, and all I have with me is my iPhone. I can jump in and put something a note in there for later, and then I'll tend to organize everything within Evernote. But it's sort of a lot of times this sort of stream of consciousness. I like to illustrate some of my drawings to, I think people learn things differently, and sometimes I like to illustrate my drawings with, a network diagram or logic or whatever. So I'll jump around between a couple different tools, but Evernote's where I organize my thoughts. And I usually will draft something pretty stream of consciousness, like I said, then step away from it. To me, that's an important piece of the process. If you're too close to something, I think you miss stuff sometimes. So I try to step away and then come back to it and then kind of reread it and try to be critical of what I pulled together. And a lot of times I find, I can better organize my thoughts when I do it that way.
The whole edit ruthlessly.
Yes.
So when did you start writing? Like high school, college, after college?
So I've always
become a thing for you.
Yeah. So I've always enjoyed writing. But I also find that I just get busy, right? I think we actually have to make time for it. And like I said, it was for me really, the challenge you had issued at the first WLPC was where I was like, all right, I want to really commit to this thing, and actually start writing. Cause I've had a couple blogs where I put, one post up and then it's like 2 years later, I'm like, oh yeah, I had a blog. I totally forgot about it. Right. So I'm trying to make sure that doesn't happen anymore. And try to be purposeful about, regular content. And I feel like there's, there's value in short content. And a lot of times, I might do a flight from San Diego to Las Vegas, right? I spent a lot of time in Las Vegas for work. It's an hour flight. That's not a bad amount of time to write something short, right? Maybe it's a small opinion on, one little topic or something. So maybe I'll draft something during that hour flight and try to publish it, or
so is this before you, after you fall asleep on the plane?
Sometimes it's all I do. It's a short flight.
That 1 hour flight, that's just enough time to fall asleep, go up to altitude. They give you a drink and then you turn around and land again. So
yeah, it's depends on the time of day of that flight. If it's the early AM flight, then sometimes it's sleeping and no writing.
And then what about for longer posts, more thoughtful things?
Yeah, so my longer posts, which usually are things that come out of, doing mobility field day or something along those lines. That's a lot where I'll take notes all through the event in Evernote, and that's about as bad as my stream of consciousness gets. And then, on some of those, I'll take time to go back in and dig into the topics a little bit more, make sure I'm as clear as I can be on them, which is challenging sometimes when the content's super new. But then I'll go back.
It goes so fast.
Super fast. Yeah. So I'll tell you, like for Mobility Field Day, I'll tend to rewatch the video. Like the fact that it's recorded is amazing, right? I'll go back and watch the video, look at my notes, add to my content. And usually my bullet point framework that I do during the event, that's only a sort of a guide of the stuff that I thought was really interesting. And then I'll take time to build up my document, which is that, referring to my notes, referring to the videos, and then pulling that together, then step away from it for a while, like I said earlier, and come back to it, and then edit to the point where I'm happy with it. And usually if it's something like that, I usually step away from it twice and edit it twice.
You use a very academic-oriented kind of writing process. That's good. I've been interviewing a bunch of people for podcasting and asked this question quite a bit. And yours is a very academic approach, which leads to very logical and probably easier to read documents because you spend that time doing the pre-edit, post-edit, waiting time and coming back. So, well done.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, another question for you. We see this term in the industry called a thought leader, and I never could figure out what that meant. So, what's a thought leader?
I'd
like to be one because it sounds really cool. I just don't know what it is. Yeah.
So to me, I think it's, if we look at what we do, your people, whoever, the people I lump into that bucket. I mean, there's a passion there behind the technology, but to me, a lot of it has to do with the application of that technology in ways that can really make a difference for somebody, right? And it could be, in the business world. It could be, on the WLPC stuff where you spawn this advisory board, right? I mean, the guys that are taking that on and how that thing has come, and developed, they're making an impact on the wireless community at large, right? And to me, that's the kind of classification I look for when I'm talking about when I use that term, right? Like,
so it's more than just the idea that they're thinking certain things. It's that they're engaged in the arena and doing something with it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a lot of ideas out there, good and bad, right? I think the application of those, and the impact that they make is one of the key differentiators, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't even think it has to be for the whole community. Even with just one of your customers, that if you could take a technology you understand and solve something that they have that wasn't a thought of that's not what you think the technology will do, is it? Like the first time I heard someone say, we ought to put RTLS tags on Alzheimer's patients. I was like, I never thought of using that same technology to track something human. And yet it makes a huge difference in those people's lives.
No, absolutely, right. And that's why I think that measure of it being impactful, I don't try to put a scope around it. It's just that you're taking you're taking something that works, or a technology or whatever, and then applying it in that new way. And it may not even be new to, right? I mean, you're still using location, but you're solving a new workflow or a business problem, by applying this technology in a different way, right?
Well, that's good. Thanks. Last question I have for you here is, if someone's, you seem to like to write and you have good skills there. If someone's hated writing in school and hasn't written anything, in their whole career, and yet hears, oh, maybe I should be, writing is a good skill. What would you recommend for them to start learning to be a better writer?
So I think people who read a lot are also people who can learn to write a lot. And we're within my own company, we're starting a thing for our engineers to encourage more of this social media engagement. And we've been talking to them about how they could get engaged, right? And I think the same thing applies here, which is, if someone's not really sure, right, or they don't want to, whenever you put an idea out there, right, you're inviting feedback, both good and bad, right? And I think some people are afraid of negative feedback, right? They don't want to put something out there and look dumb, right? So I recommend, so for me, the toe in the water, you're out there reading a lot of stuff. If you like something that somebody else wrote, share that on social media, right? Or better, add your opinion or share what you liked about it, and then, and share it, right? And from there, and then maybe it's, maybe you start with that, right? And then it can be, hey, I really liked what you said about this, but did you think about X, right? And maybe you're, expanding upon that original discussion. To me, I think those are areas where people can start to get a little, more involved and start putting their own thoughts out there in a way that maybe they're leveraging, a thought track that somebody else has started. But they're getting into the flow of how these things work, right? And then hopefully they'll take it from there. And the 10 Talk stuff that we've done, it's everybody has some sort of nugget they can share, or some experience that if there's 100 people in the room, there's probably 10 or 20 people that are going to learn something out of that, right? So just getting over the hump of being, maybe afraid to share that story. I think there's some ways you can do it, in baby steps.
It's only 10 minutes. And if everyone hates it, all I have to do is wait 9 more minutes and they'll have something they want to listen to.
Right.
But that's why they're all online, so everyone can go look at them. Well, Shaun, I appreciate your time. Look forward to reading your blogs coming off the Mobility Filled Day. And how would someone track you down if they were looking to see some of your blog or your Twitter handle or LinkedIn?
Yeah, so my blog is blog.svneal.com. My Twitter is @SV_Neal. And then my LinkedIn is LinkedIn link and then /Shaun Neal.
Well, great. Thank you for your time. And I hope you have a great weekend coming up.
Thank you very much. I hope you guys have a great weekend as well.
Wireless LAN blog reviews with Glenn Cate. A closer look at some of our favorite Wi-Fi blogs and their authors.
Glenn Cate, welcome to the show. What Wi-Fi blog review do you have for us this time? Well, hey, Matthew, great to talk with you. And we're going to be looking at a revolutionary Wi-Fi blog site. And that tease probably gives it away. We're going to be looking at revolutionwifi.net. Andrew Van Nage is the author and has a great WLAN blog site. And really, to me, gives back a lot to the Wi-Fi community through his blog site. I think that's one reason why he received the WLPC Person of the Year Award in 2016 at the Phoenix conference. Andrew holds several Wi-Fi certifications. He's CWNE number 84, and you can find him on Twitter at Revolution Wi-Fi. I've got my laptop up here looking around his Wi-Fi site, and I love what he has on his first page. He says, great Wi-Fi starts with proper design. I think that needs to be etched in gold someplace because that's exactly what we need to do, proper design. So looking some more about his site, you can go to his blog tab down below. And for example, his first page here is TDWR 5 gigahertz weather radar locations and frequencies. And any of us engineers know that if you're doing DFS channels and 5 gigahertz, you need to know about weather radar. So that's just one of many different great things he has on his blog site. So you can poke around, and what a neat thing he has here too is his capacity planner. It's in his tabs on the right. And if you're ever doing high capacity work, you definitely want to download that app and look at Andrew's capacity planner. There's just so many neat things on this blog site, Matthew. It's just a super, super site. I really think that every WLAN engineer out there needs to be sure they have Revolution Wi-Fi bookmarked and go there regularly. It's just a great website.
Anything else we don't want to miss on the site?
Okay, well, since you mentioned it, I'll tell you another great tool he has. And he doesn't have a link on here, so go to his search box and type in the term SSID calculator. And it'll bring up another awesome tool that Andrew has written and produced. Those of us who are wireless engineers know too many SSIDs just cause too much overhead. That's one thing for us as engineers to know, but how do you explain that to a client? Well, he has given a tool where you can go and put in the number of access points, the data rates, the number of SSIDs, the PHY type, etc., and it will tell you what the overhead is. And if you can show a client that you've got 30, 40% overhead just in beacon frames, that will be a good reason why you need to consolidate or cut down the number of SSIDs or not create a huge number of SSIDs in a network. This is just a great tool, especially if, not only you're working as a WLAN engineer, but if you're trying to describe to a client why you don't need that many SSIDs, this is just another great tool. Just many things that Andrew has on his website. If you have not checked out revolutionwifi.net, be sure to check out Andrew's website.
Thank you, Glenn. And we can follow you on Twitter at grcate, correct?
That's correct.
Awesome. Well, until next time.
Hey, this is Glenn Cate, reminding all of you WLAN professionals out there to keep on blogging in the free world. Bye for now.
WLAN interview.
Joel, how are you?
Good. How are you, Keith?
So are you in that heat wave up there in the Northwest?
Yeah, it's pretty warm. I haven't checked the temperature today, but it's been around 100 degrees every day here pretty consistently. The air conditioning didn't stop running until about 11 p.m. last night, so it's pretty warm.
Yeah. Well, are you directly in Boise, or you're in one of the suburbs?
I'm in one of the suburbs. I live only about 20 minutes away from downtown Boise, but I'm here in the office today in downtown.
20 minutes in Boise could be a long way.
Yeah, it is a pretty long ways for Boise. It's not that big of a place.
And if you get on the freeway, you can go 15, 20 miles.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the Wireless LAN Professionals podcast. Glad to have you on. How long have you been working with MetaGeek?
I'm coming up on 5 years pretty quick here. It's going to be about 5 years in November.
Wow. Man, time flies.
I know,
You're like the voice of MetaGeek for the world, right?
Yeah, for better or for worse. Yeah, I think I am at this point.
Well, that's a good place to be. Just on a side note, I'm very sad because I've had lots of people ask for the recording of your training session after hours at WLPC in Phoenix this year, and we didn't have it recorded. So sorry about that, but you'll have to do it again.
Yeah, we could definitely do it again next time. WLPC was a lot of fun, and ours was a vendor-specific training, and so the cameras weren't on. But maybe next year we'll mix it up a little bit and do something different. But yeah, that was fun to come down there and speak, and the rest of the conference was just great. I'm looking forward to next year.
So you are CWNE number 233.
Yep, that's right. When did that happen?
How long did it take you to go from starting to being a CWNE?
It took quite a while. I'm trying to think about when I first got my CWNA. I took the class from Robert Bartz over in Denver way back, I think in 2013, I think is when I got my CWNA, and then slowly added to the certs from there until getting my CWNE about, 2 months ago? It's hazy now. I can't remember exactly when it happened, but yeah, it took took almost 4 years, I think.
Well, good. It's a good path to be on, and I'm glad you stayed at it and worked at it. So, well, let's have a discussion about some things that you see in the world that's kind of unique to where MetaGeek is and MetaGeek's market. You work with, teach, and talk to people, not always wireless LAN professionals.
That's absolutely true. So my official job title at MetaGeek is technical trainer. I started out just doing tech support here, actually, and gradually transitioned into this full-time technical trainer role. I do a lot of other things too. Since we're a fairly small company, we all wear a lot of different hats. But we sell products to pretty much anyone that touches Wi-Fi. And as a result, we talk to a lot of different people with a lot of varying skill sets.
That was very, very nicely said. Varying skill sets.
Yeah.
How would you put that as compared to having a CWNA level knowledge?
So a lot of the customers that I work with regularly and that I talk to are way below CWNA knowledge level. Probably not even CWTS. We're talking people that know how to plug in access points, and they know that they can configure channels. They know that they can configure SSIDs, things like that. But that's about as deep as their knowledge goes. What I find, though, is that they're very hungry to know more, and they just aren't even sure where to start, where to begin. So lots of different levels out there. And, every now and then I have, even like CWNEs will contact us with questions about how we're getting, how we're arriving at this number or that number in our application. And so it's all over the place depending on the customer. It may be an absolute 100% beginner, or it may be a seasoned professional.
How can you tell? It just, a couple sentences into an engagement, what do you use to kind of gauge where the rest of the discussion is going to go?
That's a great question. Back when I was doing support, that's when I had to do make those kind of snap judgment calls, like how much does this person know about Wi-Fi? And I remember way back before I'd met Brian Long, he contacted us, and I didn't know who he was, I didn't know anything about him, and it didn't take more than one or two messages back and forth before I realized, like, whoa, this guy really knows what he's talking about. In fact, a pretty common thing that happens is somebody will contact me and they have a bunch of questions, and I'll just straight up admit, hey, you know what? You're way deeper in this on than I am. I'll do my best to answer your questions, but I think you've outpaced me here. So when somebody gets a hold of us, I just start asking them some questions about their network and ask them about their configuration and what type of problems they're having. And you can usually tell within a few minutes what their particular skill level is, and that way you can help them address their needs.
So let's say you're talking to, I don't know, a technician that's not even CWTS. They're doing home automation installs, big MDUs or something. What are the big problems that they come across? So
specific to the home automation installers, that's a pretty big market that we actually have a lot of customers that do home automation, and those guys are special because they're kind of audio video guys that had networking thrust on them, so like now not only do they have to do the audio video side of things, they also have to be a networking expert because networking is becoming increasingly big in homes. And so all of a sudden, all these guys are having to figure out, like, okay, well, now they understand Ethernet reasonably well. Small network Ethernet's not too difficult. You can plug things in, and it'll basically work. You set up a DHCP server and DNS and things like that, and you're good to go. The wireless side, though, can be really perplexing to them because they just can't see it, and too many people think that wireless is just like Ethernet, when in fact you and I know it's completely different.
Well, what kind of problems do they come across when, say, they're putting Wi-Fi in a home or specifically in a multi-unit dwelling?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that the home side and the MDU, the multi-dwelling unit thing, are probably two separate issues entirely. On the home side, a big one is they're not sure what even the best practices are. Should they give every access point the same SSID? Should they give them all different SSIDs? What kind of security should they use? Should they use WPA? Should they use WPA2 personal? What kind of channels should they put their APs on? Those are all questions that they're not even sure how to answer because they're just not to that level yet. Problems that they run into, a big one is coverage. Coverage is just a pervasive residential problem where it's very, very difficult to get coverage everywhere. And then when you get to these home automation networks that have a high level of automation going on, there's a ton of Internet of Things devices on the network, from security systems to multimedia devices and touch panels for controls for lighting and all these things. Then they start to run into once they get their coverage problems out of the way, well, now they've got a congestion problem because, they've got access points that are on bad channels or on the same channel. And so now we're not quite getting into that kind of high density point of things, but we're getting to the point where a single channel isn't able to sustain all of these APs that they've all got situated on one channel. So congestion's starting to become a problem. Another big one is the home automation techs out there have to balance multiple different types of wireless technologies in one environment. One example of that is Zigbee. Zigbee is a low power, low throughput mesh protocol. It's fairly narrow band. It's only a few megahertz wide. And from what I've seen, Wi-Fi 802.11 will actually stomp all over Zigbee. So now they've got these problems where they've got all of their security systems and maybe some of their lighting controls and things like that are on the Zigbee side. And then they're trying to deploy 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and they aren't getting along. And so that's another problem that I see in the home automation space.
Are they still deploying 2.4 primary, or is it just?
Yes. Yeah. Part of the reason for that is there are still some vendors out there that play in that home automation space. It's kind of funny that, hanging out in the enterprise side of things, you're used to seeing names like Cisco and Aruba and Aerohive and so on and so forth. Whereas once you get over into the home automation space, it's a completely different set of vendors. It's a set of vendors that you would never even hear about if you stuck strictly to the enterprise side of things. And some of those vendors are still selling 2.4 gigahertz only gear. It is getting better and better. We're finally getting to the point where 5 gigahertz gear is becoming more standardized. But then there's that other problem of, the classic problem that goes way, way back to, I think all the way back to 1999, where everybody looks at 2.4 versus 5 gigahertz and goes, ugh, well, I don't want the range problems of 5 gigahertz. I'm going to deploy 2.4. So we're still seeing some cases where either we've only got 2.4 gigahertz gear being deployed, or 5 gigahertz is not the focus. We're just deploying dual band APs, and great, we've got 2.4 coverage everywhere. I guess we've got a little bit of 5 gigahertz coverage as well, but the networks just aren't being designed with 5 gigahertz in mind.
Well, moving on to the MDU question, just a little side note. This week I was doing some consulting with a group that has 1 million plus APs. Obviously, it's a cable modem provider. And in some of their high density situations, they have we'll talk about their names in a second, their cable modem / router / access points reporting back so they can kind of get an idea of what the environments are like. And some of their APs are reporting back anywhere from 30 to 40 other APs from the same manufacturer, from the same ISP on the same channel.
Yikes. And
obviously getting, really, really low throughput. And there are people complaining and they're like, well, how do we fix this? And you're like, okay, if you're in that dense of an environment where you can see 40 other APs on the same channel, yeah, 2.4 probably isn't your best bet.
Yeah, absolutely. Before going on to the MDU thing, one thing is whenever I teach a lot of entry-level classes on things like, just entry-level spectrum analysis, entry-level packet analysis, things like that. And the number one thing that I always start the conversation out with every single time, and I've regretted it whenever I've skipped this part, is I always talk about the half duplex nature of Wi-Fi. And I just try to drill into their minds like, look, Wi-Fi is like a human conversation. You can't, if you talk and if I talk at the exact same time, we cancel each other out and we can't understand each other. Only one device can talk on a channel at a time. And so ultimately what that means is that capacity is limited by the channel. And yeah, when you get 40 APs on the same channel, the capacity's gone. I mean, it's completely used up probably by the management overhead. There's probably nothing left after that.
Yeah, they're kind of noticing that. One of the examples I use, and feel free to use it in your training, is the first time I got a FRS radio, the little family radio service, kind of CB radio kind of thing, but for their little walkie-talkies. But you have all these supposed channels you could set them up, and we took our extended family down to Disneyland, and I got like 6 of them, so all the groups could talk to each other, and we thought we were going to be hot stuff. Have you ever been to Disneyland with FRS radio?
No, I haven't, but I can imagine what happened.
All you hear is everyone in the whole park is all talking, and only one can talk at a time. Not only that, you don't know who's talking. And it was
co-channel contention, right?
It was co-channel contention because only one person could talk on the channel at a time, and there wasn't that many channels to choose from, and we just thought, oh yeah, we'll just put our little privacy filter on here, and the privacy filter just said you won't hear the other people, but you can't talk at the same time if they're talking. So yeah, FRS radios in any kind of public space are kind of useless.
I'll bet. Yeah. And I think that WLAN chipsets are a lot better at contending for airtime than humans are too. So I'll bet that was just an absolute nightmare.
And a little faster.
Yeah. A little bit quicker, just a little bit quicker than people.
Just a little quicker. Well, let's talk about terminology. We live in a world for, those who are probably listening to this podcast, don't say WAP because what's the W in WAP stand for? And people go, well, it means wireless. Well, if it was wired, it would still be a W. So putting a W in front of AP has no value whatsoever.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how you can tell you're talking to someone. If they say WAP, they probably work at Best Buy and wear a blue shirt. Mm-hmm. But in your world, they say WAP all the time.
Yeah, they do. WAP is a normal term, and it makes me cringe. I go, ugh. Somebody says WAP, and it makes me cringe. But here's why. In the home automation world, there's actually 2 types of APs that these guys have to deal with. There's a WAP, which is a Wi-Fi access point, and then there is a ZAP, which is a Zigbee access point. So all of a sudden, the terminology, they actually kind of need that extra letter on the end there, and I can't really fault them for it. So it's a legitimate reason to say a WAP. Now, when I teach classes, I just say AP. I say this class is about Wi-Fi. We know it's a Wi-Fi access point, so I'm going to say AP for the point of the class. Another thing that I've noticed, and this one kind of bugs me a little bit, is over on the ISP and MSO and telco side of things. Talking with technicians on that side, we've got several ISPs out there that use our products because Wi-Fi is becoming a really big deal, a big deal for ISPs. As you know, if you visit an MDU where an ISP was trying to provide Wi-Fi there, they've got some really interesting terminology for their hardware there. One of them that I see a lot is a CPE, customer premise equipment. That usually refers to their router / gateway / AP / switch combo box that the ISP has provided. They might also call it a router. And then what they do for additional access points, a lot of ISPs are starting to provide additional APs in the house. They call those extenders. And so I've had to kind of have to rewrite a little part of my brain and remember, okay, when they say extender, they're not talking about a repeater like I would think. They're actually talking about additional APs.
The actual AP itself. Yeah, I've also seen a lot of WISPs. They use CPE, and I like that it's a separate term because CPE is a non-Wi-Fi. It's not it might be using the same frequencies in 5 gig on licensed frequencies, but it doesn't allow clients to talk to it. It only talks back upstream.
Right. It's only backhaul between the wireless internet service provider and the customer if they're providing connectivity to, and then that's passed off. I would assume passed off via Ethernet to whatever normal distribution system is in the home.
Their gateway router, modem, AP, whatever combo thing they want to call it.
Yeah.
Well, Joel, thanks for your time today. Appreciate hearing a little bit from the other side, from the Wi-Fi. I'm not going to call them not professionals because they're professionals in their own world.
Yeah,
it's just
they are.
not enterprise kind of Wi-Fi.
A couple closing comments too is that what I find with the home automation crowd, the ISP crowd, they're all hungry for knowledge. They want to know, and they're extremely receptive to info. So, when you get a chance to those of you that are listening, when you get a chance, reach out to these guys, reach out to the technicians out there. They want to know, and they want help, and they're a great crowd to talk to, and I really enjoy working with them.
And let's not just slam them just because they say WAP.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks for your time, Joel.
Thanks, Keith.
Tools Review, where we review software, hardware, gadgets, and toys of interest to wireless LAN professionals.
Today's tool we'll be reviewing is called iStat Menus, and this one happens to be the latest version is iStat Menus 5. If you go to the show notes, you can get the link to go out and pick it up. This is an advanced Mac system monitor that fits in your top menu bar. It's to give you live, real-time information about what's going on. I've been an avid user of this utility for many years on all my Mac systems. In fact, it's one of the first apps I ever install when I'm moving from a Mac to a new Mac. It adds tons of configurability, if that's a word. You can make it show just exactly what you need. It's still has the ability, though, if you don't configure everything, and a lot of times you don't have enough space up in your menu bar at the top to hold all the data you want to see. But iStat Menus has the ability to just do a quick click, and then there's a drop down, and in the drop down menu you can get all the other details you might need. So there's some main categories of statistics and data that you come up with, and they include CPU and GPU, your memory, your sensors, both the temperature sensors. If you have a fan, we'd show the fan speed, whatever. Your date and time, even a world map can be in there. Your current battery and what the power is being used, as well as disk usage and activity. Those are pretty standard things of looking at how your computer's running. But those are all great, and they're available, and every now and then I take a look at them. But for me, I mainly use this for network activity. I have mine configured to keep a real-time graph right on the top of the menu bar showing both input in and out for all my network connections. If I want, I can just click on the icon and quickly drill down and see a breakdown by connection. I can even see the top 5 apps that are hogging the network pipe. So on the podcast show notes, you can see there's a link, and I put a graphic there of how I have my personal copy of iStat Menus configured. It's showing me just the information I like with not too much. But again, it's very customizable, and you can drag and drop and put whatever you want, change the format from kilobits or megabits, whether you want the graphs to be up and down or left and right, whatever, and even where your decimal points are going to be. You can configure iStat Menus' initial toolbar. In addition, there's also ways you can configure the drop-down items. It's a great tool. I think it's about $18 for a single user, but it's only $25 if you want a family pack for a family of 5. Obviously, in my family, we use that up for sure. Again, it's well worth your money. It'll help you stay on top of your computer and its network connections, both in real time. In addition, if you want more than just the network, it has all those other pieces about how your computer's going right now in real time. So this tool, called iStat Menus 5, easily worth your time and money. I think this is a great tool you ought to put on any Mac.
Wireless LAN terminology.
R value. This is an ITU-T specification for determining call quality. R value is an objective measurement computed directly from measurements of packet loss, jitter, and delay.
Made it to the end of another episode. I'm glad that you're listening. Hopefully we're providing some place where you can come and engage, learn, be inspired, and be entertained. So I appreciate that you are a listener to the Wireless LAN Professionals podcast. We do this for you. We're glad that you're there. If you have feedback, feel free to give us feedback. And thanks for listening in today as we had an interview with Shaun Neal and an interview with Joel Crane, both of which were good interviews. We appreciate your listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Wireless LAN Pros for all the latest news and updates, and also connect directly with Keith on Twitter at Keith R. Parsons. Head over to www.wlanpros.com for this episode's show notes, as well as the latest in all things Wi-Fi.